You ready? Well, just by way of quick reminder, a couple of times ago when I addressed you, I spoke on the subject beyond Goliath. That some issues are even bigger than Goliath. David had just been anointed king, and at news of that, it says the full force of the Philistine army came against him. So we saw a couple of weeks ago, how do you handle, what do you do when you have to kick into survival mode? What do you do when your prayer moves from asking God for things like, God heal me, or God provide for my finances this month, and all of a sudden now your prayer switches to, God help me make it through another day. I just want to keep my head above water. Well, we saw but that David immediately ran to a stronghold. Just say stronghold. He had a place he could go, which is more of a what he does than a where it's at. Because he knew that before he engaged his enemies in battle, he had to escape to a place where he could hear from God. He knew he had to gear up for battle. Before that, he had to get away to a place where God would have his undivided attention. We talked about that beyond Goliath. Sometimes these days, in the pandemic days, seem like, man, this is relentless. It just doesn't go away. We looked at that. Then last time I spoke to you, I spoke on the subject, No Time to Thrive. The woman that had the issue of blood for 12 years. Her crisis was constant. Her money was gone, and she was worse off now than she was before she spent all of her energy and time and finances. The shame was huge, but we saw that she still had confidence to believe that God is able. That not only is God able, God is merciful, that God can do this for me. And we pressed on as well. So today what I want to do is come full circle. That even though my first message in this little series was beyond Goliath, today I want to look at that famous passage, the Goliath passage, but I want to bring up some things I have never brought up. A few things will be similar, but a few things I've never brought up from the account of David as a young teenager facing Goliath. So we'll find this passage in 1 Samuel chapter 17. Y'all there? Don't mean you have to be at the passage yet. I just mean, are you out there breathing? You still alive? 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 32. David said to Saul, Saul's the king, David's a shepherd boy. Most scholars think he's probably 14 or 15 years old. David said to Saul, let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him. But Saul replied, you're not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he's been a warrior since his youth. But David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine, someone say trash talk. It's okay once in a while to have a little sanctified trash talk. Because in the Hebrew, this is almost cussing. I'm not going to say it is. It's almost gussy. He says, this blankety blank Philistine will be like one of them. Why? Not because I don't like him. That's not the issue. Because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from COVID, who rescued me from pandemic, who's rescued me from the paw of the lion, the paw of the bear, will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. Saul said to David, all right, go and the Lord be with you. Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword, and man, he was looking good. He was decked out, baby, looking good. Fastened the sword over the tunic and tried walking around because he was not used to them. I can't wear this. That's what I've called today's message. I can't wear this. David goes, I cannot go in these, he said to Saul. I'm not used to them. So he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in hand, approached the Philistine. Meanwhile, the Philistine with his shield bearer in front of him kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was little more than a boy, glowing with health and handsome, and despised him. He said to David, "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" And the Philistine cussed him out, cursed him by his gods. "Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals." I like more trash talk coming from David now, guys. David said back to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day, the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." Somebody say, "I can't wear this." Pastor Dan's made reference a couple times when I've come up to either do offering or to speak, and he's been mentioning how Marguerite in these last few months has been dressing me. For years, I like to go shopping. In fact, if you go back decades, I kind of helped her get into clothes. But now our roles have completely reversed. Have to admit that at my age, I'm just not interested anymore in going shopping. So I don't really care what I'm wearing anymore. I'm just not into it. So Marguerite, a few months ago, could kind of see that. Because if you'd noticed, of course, COVID kind of shut things down, too. And I'm not as good at online, because I can't try it on. So she's kind of got me more back on. And this outfit you see today, she put together. And actually, she put it together to wear because Terry Crews got his star on the Walk of Fame last Friday. And we were initially we were invited, and the whole thing got canceled because of the spike in COVID. Then it got reopened for just a smaller group, and I was really blessed because they wanted us to be part of that smaller group. So Marguerite kind of put this together, and watch. You know, certain things I've noticed I can't wear anymore. And I know, for example, Terry dresses awesome. Even though we have similar builds, he's quite a bit younger than me. I'm quite a bit older than him. So I always have to ask Margaret, but is this age appropriate? You know, first of all, does it look good on my body type? Because some things I really like, they look awesome, but they don't necessarily look awesome on me. You know, Marguerite is built more like a model. She's got long legs. You know, I'm not built like a model. So certain things that look good on the mannequin, or certain things that even look good on these old guy models. You know, these guys that are old and they're still model, just won't look good with my body type. And some things are just not age appropriate. The part of David's success is that when Saul gave him the best of the best to go fight this giant Goliath, he said, "This stuff just doesn't fit." To give you quick cliff notes, or previously on 24, just real quick, you'll remember that in the 11th century BC, King Saul, the first king of Israel, they were at war with the Philistines over the land, over the promised land. And in the valley of Elah is where this was all going down. And listen, and for 40 plus straight days, Israel on one side of the hilltops, Philistine army on the other side, Goliath would go down, around 9 feet tall, and challenge him to this contest. He'd say, "There's no reason for all of us to die. Just send down one of your best warriors, and I will fight this warrior, and whoever wins, that's who wins the battle, and we got the land. It'll be simple, it'll be decisive, and we don't have to have a whole lot of death." And then he would defy the armies of the living God to send someone down. It's going down, baby. The Philistines had a WMD. Anyone even remember that phrase anymore? When we first went to war in Iraq years ago, do they have weapons of mass destruction? Goliath was a weapon of mass destruction. But nobody took up the challenge. Israel had just sat silent day after day after day after day for 40 days. You might remember that David wasn't even in the army. One day his daddy just sends him there to go bring some food, bring some lunch to his brothers. And while shepherd boy, the little teen boy David, is bringing food to his brothers who were part of the army, sitting there doing nothing, hoping the problem will go away. I said, hoping the problem will go away. Hoping that COVID will somehow just go away. David shows up and he hears this. It's funny. They had heard it. Listen, the army had heard this challenge 40 times, 40 straight days, and done nothing. David hears it once and goes, what's up with this? He's not even there as part of the army. David could have easily said, hey man, I'm just here to bring lunch. I'm just here to say hi to my brothers. My dad wants me to give him a hug. No, David, what's this going down? You know, isn't it amazing that many people somehow think that avoiding the issue will make it go away? Ignoring the issue will eventually let the problem go away. Maybe you can close your eyes, plug your ears, but how many of you know some realities just keep showing up? I don't want to be negative, but most doctors I've talked to say there's a very good chance that COVID's going to never completely go away. That there will always, as viruses change and mutate, that there will always be some form of something out there. So if you're waiting for the whole thing, for them to make an announcement, COVID is gone forever, good luck. And of course, there are other issues, sometimes more important, that we face. Avoidance does not make the issue go away. Some things don't get better with time. Some things need direct intervention and confrontation. Sometimes you can't simply accept the new normal. I find it hilarious how in the last 10 to 15 years, cultures come up with this new phrase, this is the new normal. Somehow in California, not just because of all the climate change, because of our policies, they want to convince us it's just the new normal now. We're going to have to shut down electricity. Well, I don't want to go off on all that. But if they had done the right thing for the last 20, 30 years with the power structure here, we wouldn't be facing that. But that's the new normal now. You can't expect too much. It's the new normal. Israel, the army, had heard it multiple times and done nothing. David hears it once and decides to do something about it. How many challenges do we need before we're going to develop a David spirit and decide to do something about it? I'm telling you, the time has come, the kingdom of God and faith, this church, we need less Israelite army men and women and more Davids. I even get cracked up. And most of this, I only know a few of them. Maybe not, but in the Christian media keeps reporting, because in this day and age, so many, a few years ago, of our somewhat well-known worship leaders, not as many pastors, more in the music industry and others, are kind of leaving their faith, or kind of leaving their faith. They're saying, well, I still believe in God, I just don't like this Christian thing anymore. And they call it deconstructing. If you see it, it's a big thing now. I allow people to help me deconstruct, to break it all down. And I found I don't really buy into this stuff anymore. I remember thinking, you know what? What were you up to leading worship for all this time then? Were you so poorly constructed to begin with? What made you think you could stand up and lead hundreds and thousands of people and become a best-selling worship or a best-selling author? And by the way, culture doesn't allow us to deconstruct anything else. Are we allowed to go and deconstruct someone who's in a community that maybe we don't agree on everything with? No way, but it's okay to deconstruct. Listen, am I allowed to deconstruct the Democratic platform or the Republican platform? No, but you can deconstruct Christians, because the world doesn't like Christians. They'd like to see us go away. And a lot of you guys sitting around. I think it's time for a few believers to rise up in faith and with love, not to be a pain in the you-know-what, to say, look, we know the God we know, we believe what we believe, and we're moving forward, and we're going to make a difference. Three things, at least, kind of made David have this spirit about him that made him different. Everyone else, they had heard it all this time, and they just had avoided it, ignored it, maybe it'll go away. Maybe Goliath will have a heart attack. David hears it once and decides to directly confront what's going on. Three things I said. Number one, he had a different spirit. Someone just say a different spirit. In other words, he had a vision for victory. No one else had it. The nation, I would say the nation was on lockdown. But David is like, no. Instead of being afraid, David says, all right, what do I get when I win? I didn't read all of it. But one thing David asked Saul, he says, what happens to the guy who beats this guy? See, David is already looking past the issue, past the problem, and he's seeing what happens once he wins. I just think that's kind of a good spirit to have one time. Man, what's it going to be like when we finally make it through this season? What's God going to do in my life? See, some people focus on what they have to go through. David focuses on what he gets once he's gone through it. Some people see the problem, other people see the prize. We need a victory mindset, not a defeated mindset. On the other side, I don't care what your issues are right now. I've made a lot of reference to the current big issue of COVID and pandemic, but on the other side, can you see yourself being wiser, stronger, bigger, and better? Marguerite does. Thank you, Marguerite. Not only did he have a different spirit, number two, he had a God resume. Do you remember what he said to King Saul? When King Saul said, you can't go face this guy. You're too young. You're too little. You're not experienced. David says, well, let me give you my resume. He tells about the lion. He tells about the bear. And they send him out. That's why they send him out. Because you would think, what kind of king, what kind of rulers are going to send out a young teenager to face a big giant like that? The only thing that changed their mind was his resume of what God had done. I think I'm preaching to someone here today, and you have some God in your resume. I'm looking at some people right now, and I know, maybe not all of you, but I'm looking at a whole lot of you today. And you know, and God knows, and probably your mama knows, that you wouldn't even be here today had it not been for the Lord that was on your side. There have been a few lions. There's been a few bears that have come after you. You have friends that died decades ago, and yet you're still here, and you're the last one that should still be here. And do you want to know why? It says God has been on your side. And that ought to start to develop a little bit of confidence. David's like, this ain't the first time I've had to go to battle. This ain't the first time. And actually, it isn't just his resume. It's the God in his resume. It's not just that David has all this experience. He's had God act on his behalf in his past, and therefore he has confidence that the same God that was with him in the past is going to be with him now. The same God that did that is going to do this. The same God that did it then is going to do it now. And I believe that over your life today. He's motivated, not so much by what little David did. He's motivated by what God did for him. He had a vision for victory. He had a sanctified and a blessed memory. But not only that, he finally had an anointed outfit. You see, they dressed him in what they thought was the best thing to go out and to face that giant. But look, I want you to get this. This may be the main reason why I'm preaching this for someone today. Because this is really, really hard. What I'm going to tell you right now is very difficult to do. It's very difficult for me. And I love the Lord. I'm a preacher. It is hard for me. David knows that he can't go to battle with Goliath looking like Goliath. Now, let me just take a second and unfold what I mean by this. Although I know most of you probably already got it. I can't look like him and fight him. See, it's very difficult in our world that all of a sudden, bam, you get attacked online. And maybe a lot of you have it, but bam, it's extraordinarily difficult to not want to go back and fight them how they're fighting you. You say that about me, boom, I'll post this about you. And you want to start saying this about me, then I'm going to start saying that about you. Someone look at me right now. Just because I'm an old guy now, and I got fair skin, and I think my freckles with age have probably faded, but most of my life I was a red-headed, freckle-faced kid, grew up in church, and looks like a sweet preacher. But I want to promise you something. I know how to cuss people out. You want to cuss me out? I know how to cuss you out. And I cannot tell you how hard it is sometimes that when you get hit at a certain level, you want to attack back at that level. Oh, you think because I'm a preacher, I can't fight like that. Huh? Let me tell you, you son of a... What do you think about that? But I've learned something, and I just want to suggest this to you, that if I fight like them, I don't always have God on my side fighting with me, and therefore I may win, I may lose, but it's like any other fight, whatever. If they're stronger, they're going to beat me. But if I have God on my side, I don't care how strong they are, because they can't beat God. Anyone hearing me out there? See, I grew up in a fairly healthy household. Therefore, I did not grow up streetwise. And over the years, I've had to learn, thank God I've learned most of it just from the Lord, but sometimes I just make mistakes and try to win, and I find out later, I'll talk about you. But listen, look, I've had to learn I cannot, when all is said and done, I really can't outlie a liar. I think I can. I'm going to get him. I can't out-abuse an abuser. I can't even out-ugly ugly. Like, you want to be ugly? I'll show you ugly. Then I find out that out there in the world, there's a whole other level of ugly I didn't know even existed. Are you breathing? See, David got that. David's like, if I'm going to take this guy down, I can't take him down the same way he's going to try to take me down. Because if I try to fight Goliath on that level, David, I can't outlie that guy. I can't out-ugly that guy. But I'll tell you what I have learned. The Lord will fight my battles for me. And man, it's almost like he said, you come at me, like he looks at Goliath, you come at me with nasty posts and lies and innuendos on Instagram and TikTok. But I'm coming at you in the power and might of the Lord Jesus Christ. Are you breathing out there? That's a huge one. I'm going to say it again. I don't often say this. I think that may be the main reason why God has me preaching this message today, because I told God, I can't preach on Goliath because my first message in the series was called Beyond Goliath. And I'm going to go back and end the series talking about Goliath. And as I went through it, I really felt this, at least maybe I was just preaching to me. Sometimes if y'all ain't getting it, I go, God, I didn't mess up. God, no, that's okay if they didn't get it. This is for you, Jim. And if the shepherd ain't halfway healthy, then forget about the sheep anyway. Anyone breathing out there? That's why I called this message, I Can't Wear This. And honestly, if a lot of you will see this, me say, Pastor, we love you. We don't mind you cuss that guy out. Some of you, we can't go to church. But some of you be like, Pastor, we get it, whatever. We forgive you. We get like that too. But I can't wear this. Well, that doesn't mean I can't win on occasion doing that. Come on, someone look at me. I didn't say you can never win doing that. I'm just saying it's a toss-up now. You may win, you may lose, it may be a draw. But when you trust in God, and God's fighting your battles, God's undefeated. Let me kind of close with this concept here. And over the years, I've heard so many great sermons on David picked out. How many stones did David pick out of the little riverbed there? 5 smooth, I did 5. 5 smooth stones. Can we edit that? And I've even heard preachers preach incredible message on what each stone stood for. I go, that's great preaching. I'm not sure where they got it from. Really? Maybe he just picked up. Here's what I really think. Can I prove this? No. Let me. If most people would read this passage, you say, why do you think David took 5 stones? Without having to be a theological expert, I think one of your first responses would be, well, why does a Western gunslinger make sure his 6-shooter has all 6 bullets in it? Well, duh. Because what if you miss the first time? Oh, I guess it wasn't God. I'm out. Now, again, I'm trying to say something now that someone needs to hear. This may be the other reason why God had me preach this story. Because sometimes we people of faith, and I'm just as guilty as you are at this, we tend to think that if it's really God, and if God's really on our side, then all it takes is one prayer. All it takes is one faith declaration. All it takes is getting to church on campus one time. Online, one time. But how many of you know? In fact, I wrote this down because I just want to make sure I said this right. I just love this comment. David had the kind of faith that can endure a failure. Ooh. Can your faith endure a failure? Does anyone here think that if David had missed with that first stone, he just would have simply said, well, I'm history now? I'm not a betting man, but as I used to say, but if I were a betting man, I'd be willing to bet money that David, when lions charging you, or bears charging you, or all the other enemies he didn't have time to tell us about, I would think there were times he missed, even though God was with him. And you don't just quit. David, I bet, got pretty good at reloading. Because when he throws it, if it went flying past Goliath's head like a bullet, I bet Goliath was going to be all over him quickly. I want to look at someone right now. It's too soon to quit. It doesn't mean God's not with you. It doesn't mean there's a lack of faith simply because your first attempt or your second attempt or your third attempt didn't work out how you thought it was going to work out. Some people think that whatever they pray should happen immediately. Whatever they speak should come about right away. Since God will give us the desires of our heart, once we reveal our desires, they should be granted like a genie. But David had enough faith in God to know that this battle is so big that he wanted to have something in reserve in case the first thing what are you talking about, Pastor? If you're believing God and God says, I'm going to bless your life, and you go apply for a position and get turned down, apply again. You try to get into one university that's been your heart's desire this whole time, and you get turned down. Well, I guess I don't have. No, apply someplace else. She turns you down. No one will ever want to marry me. Well, then start looking around and ask someone else. That may not be as good of an example, but I think. But I think you know what I'm trying to communicate to you. I love that. And I love the fact that David's ultimate faith was in God, not in how many rocks he had. And I think David's like, I'm gonna keep throwing these rocks till I hit something. That's how I've lived my life. I'm gonna keep praying until something happens. I'm gonna keep believing God until something starts to turn around. And like I've told you before, I almost said my age. People say, stop saying your age, but I was going, I am 69 years old now. I feel great. I feel as good as when I was 39, which may be a matter of being in bad shape at 39. I don't know. But I can promise you that if God graces me to live to be 99 or 109, there will be things I will still be standing in faith for, believing God for. If you will, there will still be rocks coming out of my slingshot that I never did see to the day I died. Will you regret that? Nope. Because I'm going to keep on believing. I'm going to ask and keep on asking. I'm going to knock and keep on knocking. I'm going to seek and keep on seeking. And I'm not going to quit until the giant goes down.